Hey everybody, I'm with my good buddy Aaron Wesson, and I got my friend Neil Hunefeld here. I'm Christian Carlson, and we are pumped to the max to talk about Josephus, who actually is sort of a stud for some of his hyperbole. About 16 months ago, there was a video posted by a guy named John L. Armstrong. He's a deist, a lover of Mozart-era music. He's the manager of GodVersusTheBible.com, and he posted a video on YouTube discrediting Josephus, the Jewish historian from the first century. His video is actually one of a series of videos meant to establish the remarkable claim that Jesus didn't even exist. And while we honestly think that his sloppy scholarship and the argumentation way that he takes doesn't even deserve a response, the fact that he had 5,000 people that have hit his Josephus video, 40,000 that have hit his video on Jesus never existing, we said, you know what, this matters, and we want to talk to John Armstrong, but also to the people out there who are curious, and is there evidence for Jesus? Is this stuff true, or is it all bunk? So here we go. Hope you guys are ready. We've got a lot to share, but it should go pretty quick. John Armstrong's methodology. We want to exonerate Josephus' credibility, who Armstrong actually says, Josephus, you are removed from the witness stand. And we want to tell anyone can dig into this evidence with greater responsibility than Mr. Armstrong has. And at the end of all this, we want to just share a little fun ditty that we composed in honor of Mr. Armstrong's views on Josephus. So, Sir Armstrong, which he's not Sir Armstrong, but I'm just calling him that, he is not a scholar, and there are many scholars of Josephus. And I think any viewer needs to know that this man is not a student of Jewish studies, of Jesus studies, of New Testament, religion, history. Exactly, it's a head shaker. No, he neglects to explain that there's a wider discussion going on about Josephus, that people have devoted their lives to Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, Latin, to archaeology of the time period, geography, history. It's cool. People have really studied this stuff, and Mr. Armstrong ignores them. In terms of talking about who we are, we're graduate students. We're trained to be military chaplains. We're excited about it. We live in Springfield, Missouri. I've had 3 graduate-level courses with a professor named Wave Nunnally. These guys have each had 1. Neil's taken 2 more with him this summer in Hebrew. But Wave Nunnally has a PhD in Jewish backgrounds from Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. His emphasis is Judaism of the Hellenistic period, Josephus' era. Wave Nunnally's on this stuff. He's got a website, centralfaithbuilders.com. But we're not going to Wave for this argument. We've got tons of material that support Josephus as referencing Jesus and as an outside of the Bible witness to Jesus from the first century. So, when you watch Mr. Armstrong, can we just warn you guys that his argumentation style lacks sources cited. He doesn't join the argument and do the tough research to bring you the material you need to know to make a good decision about Josephus. There's exaggeration, and there really are massive unsubstantiated claims. He'll say things like, Christians ran that empire straight into the ground, or the Gospels cannot be reconciled with what we do know about history, or the Testimonium Flavianum is the most raging hyperbole imaginable. In fact, I watched a video of him, I don't know how many you've seen, but he takes a Bible and he throws it, and while, hey, he may not respect the Bible, it actually seems that there's some kind of temper issue or something about Christians, and I know Christians have blown it, but I think there may be some agenda you want to keep your eye out for on it. In terms of rhetoric, he's got a great argumentation style. He's passionate, but where's the evidence, my friends? Where is the evidence? And we bring it. We're going to do our best, okay? Inconsistency. He actually cuts Josephus down in one video. In another video, he says, wow, Josephus actually said John the Baptist died in AD 36 or CE 36, and he references him to build his argument. So is Josephus in or is he out, Mr. Armstrong? We're asking questions like that. The argument for Josephus' reliability as a historian and for some historicity of the Testimonium Flavianum is actually so strong that we're going to argue from the work of secularists and Jewish scholars who don't even, they couldn't have an agenda about the veracity of Christianity. So, with no further ado, gentlemen, let's take a look here at Jewish Antiquities, Book 18, Chapter 3, verse 63. This is the version that Mr. Armstrong read and disapproves, disagrees, calls flagrant, basically bunk. He says it's wholesale forgery. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day. As the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him, and the tribe of Christians so named from him are not extinct at this day. You'll find Mr. Armstrong referencing popular Christian apologists, even a journalist, Lee Strobel, but he doesn't take on the heavyweights when he's talking about Josephus. And one thing you should know, my friends, is that Josephus is typical of historians of his era. There's hyperbole, there's exaggeration. This book by Meyer here, let's see, what's Josephus, The Essential Works? He says this: another fault in Josephus is one he shares with most of the ancient historians, propensity to exaggerate, particularly with numbers. But he goes on to say this, which I think is rather astounding in terms of Josephus. Credits of Josephus, however, heavily outweigh the deficits. Josephus remains our sole surviving source for so much extra biblical information that no listing would do the man justice. He shed significant light on Roman military siege tactics, unique detail on Claudian, Julio-Claudian emperors. He knows how to sustain interest, involve dialogue, deliver graphic portrayal. He excels in his geographical and architectural descriptions of the land and its structures in antiquity, areas sometimes scanted in Scripture. And his accuracy is being progressively affirmed today by archaeological excavations. So, yes, there's hyperbole, but what belongs in the Testimonium Flavianum? We want to talk about that today. Since the 16th century, scholars have been disagreeing about the degree of authenticity. So this isn't a new problem. It hasn't just been discovered, okay? While most modern scholarship regards the Testimonium Flavianum as having some additions, they call them interpolations, there's actually a consensus among the majority of scholars that the passage in its bare parts is authentic. Longtime Jewish scholar Louis Feldman, in looking at the relevant material for almost a 50-year period in the 20th century of all the scholarship on Josephus, says that 75% of scholars regard the Testimonium Flavianum as authentically Josephine. Amazing. Geza Vermesh, in Jesus in his Jewish context, speaks to the varying degrees to which scholars accept the Testimonium Flavianum. There's a whole range of what they accept, what they think is genuine, what they think was put in, but they don't say, for the most part, blatant Christian forgery. Doesn't that just sound rough? I mean, so wrong and evil. So, one degree is authors who think it's essentially authentic. We don't agree with them. The second kind of middle ground is those folks that think that there has been at least an interpolation, one thing added or more. And then there's the third category of those who agree that it's partly genuine, but partly rewritten, okay? And that's really the majority of these scholars think that it's partly genuine, partly rewritten. Definitely not what Mr. Armstrong is saying, though. You're removed from the witness stand. It's obvious to everybody that the passage can't be entirely Josephine because Josephus is a Jew who believes in Judaism. He's following and practicing it. He's actually a Pharisee, and he's working for Roman patrons who aren't like wholesale Christians at this point by any stretch of the imagination. So, he wouldn't have written Jesus was the Messiah. Feldman and Hatta, two scholars, in a book, Josephus, Judaism, and Christianity, they reveal an early contradiction in two writers, Eusebius from the late 3rd and 4th century, and Origen, late 2nd and 3rd century. And this contradiction actually adds to the historicity in the argument for Josephus, because Origen kind of cuts down Josephus in the 3rd century and says, hey, you called him the so-called Christ, but he really is the Christ. So we know that Josephus wrote in the 3rd century the so-called Christ, and this later version that said he was the Christ, that was added. So hey, we're with Mr. Armstrong, but we also hear the fact that it was in there. It wasn't wholesale added. Okay, so I want to move on. Isn't this fun, everybody? Steve Mason, Josephus in the New Testament, defends the, what we're calling the TF, Testimonium Flavianum, authenticity on